Welcome back to the Leather Shop. I'm your host, Matt Roach, and this month I have Stevie from Hellbound and Back Leather, which is a mouthful. I had to rehearse that a few times because I was like, I'm not going to get this right. Stevie, thanks for hopping on and joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Fun to be here. Thanks for having me, Matt.
So, yours is an interesting one. I know nothing about trap shooting. B, we bonded over both being lefties. And C, you have some really cool work and style and things that I don't typically see, which is for me fun. I love seeing all the different facets of leather. So, take a couple minutes and tell us who you are. Give us the story.
Well, I got into leatherworking because it ended up being a combo of a bunch of different things for me. I grew up in a house where my mom was very crafty, so we were always doing something, painting, pottery, anything cool, arts and crafts. So as I became an adult, I equated that to stress relief because I worked in a very high stress career field that was male dominated. I did and CAT scan and I specialized in trauma and operating room. So I reached towards art and painting as a stress reliever. But then when I became a mom, I realized that painting was something that wasn't easily interrupted, like something that could be interrupted easily without ruining it. So then I switched more into sewing and textiles. And then that ended up going into leather work because that was able to mix my love of trap shooting with materials and art and stress relief there. Because the leather process, like sewing, can more easily be started and stopped. So that's how I got into that. I used to compete. I haven't for several years, but I used to compete in trap shooting with my dad, with my husband, with my sister, with my brother in law. It's a family sport for us. And so that became my niche market for the most part. Um, Lots of people are wallet makers, lots of people are bag makers, which that's an art form in of itself. I've tried that for a time or two. I do make those on occasion, but I find that my passion is gear for long gun sports shooting. So that's mostly what I do.
That is really cool. I actually had to Google it. I'm not going to lie and pretend like I actually understood what it was. And now I could be wrong, but it's the clay pigeons, right? It's the ones where you go boop and like they just say shoot it in the air and you have to like get it out of the air.
Correct. So shotgun shooting, there's lots of different sports involved in it. Trap being one. Most people think of skeet when they think of shotgun sports, but there's also things like fee task or sporting clays. Sporting clays is basically like the golf of shotgun shooting. A lot of people will have a cart and you go from station to station and you take a little golf cart ride through the woods and there's completely different courses. So, very social sport there. But essentially, what trap shooting is you're in a single round, it's 25 clays that you're shooting at. And it's
Oh, that's
five
cool.
clays at five stations. So a perfect score for a single round is 25. So you call pull when you have the gun mounted and loaded. When you call pull, that's when the clay shoots out of the house. You don't know which direction it's going to go. So it can go up center in front of you, hard left, hard right, or anywhere in between. And you're trying to shoot it out of the sky. So that's what trap shooting is.
That's pretty cool. I had no idea like anything about that, but I do like remember from the movies when they're like Poe and like yes,
Yes,
like you see all these people. That's
exactly.
that's the extent of my knowledge. But you're I also find it so interesting of like the style that people kind of bring based on the type of products that they make. So yours is kind of fun because you bring a little bit of the trap shooting style of the things you make for your kind of niche market, but also you make general goods as well, which is kind of fun. So I think people bring a little bit of the thing that they work like their main market over to their other things, which I thought was kind of really interesting. So did you kind of get into leather because of a need in your trap shooting? Was the trap shooting kind of the thing that you were like, oh, I could use something for my thing that I could make better than what's available?
Yes, so that was a big part of it because as a trap shooter, you need certain gear, and there's only so many people who make gear for it. And the way that my mind works and the way that I design is I want to make things better. I want to make them more functional. As a trap shooter, I know what I want out of my gear. However, the world of shotgun sports is very old school, very traditional. And so when you're trying to reinvent the wheel, you have to be very aware that if you push it too far, no one's going to want to buy the gear.
Yeah.
They want better, they want functional, they want good looking, but too far forward, there's going to be resistance because the sport tends to be heavily older men in the sport. So I very much stand out being female, being in my 30s, and being left handed. So when I'm out in the circuit and when I compete, or even just practice or out with my family, I stand out. My sister stands out as being a female shooter, but me specifically, younger female left handed.
Let's be honest. It's because of us lefties that you stick out. You know, it's let's us lefties. We stick out like a sword. There's probably less lefties in general in this than there is probably women. I feel like us lefties, we get a bad rap. There's not enough of us around.
Hey, I embrace my awkward. I don't shy away from my weird. You know what? I am who I am, and love me or don't. At this point in my life, I'm just like, yeah, this is me, and it's just, and I the when my dad and I first started getting into trap shooting because my sister and I we played competitive fast pitch softball for years, and eventually you age out of that, and it's sort of like, well, what do we do now? Because you don't realize how much time a competitive sport takes of your life until it's not there. So
Yeah.
we were kind of like, what do we do now? And we started with rifle shooting because we're a competitive family. And we would always drive by the trap fields and be like, whoa, that looks really hard. And we took a lesson for trap shooting at the range because I come from South Florida before I moved up here to Illinois. And the gentleman at that range who did all the lessons was very nice. But one of the first things he said to me was, oh, so you're left handed? Have you ever considered shooting right handed? And I looked right at him and I was like, have you ever considered shooting left handed? And that ended the argument right there. And he was like, okay, well, I guess you're shooting lefty. And I was like, yep, yes, I am. Because
So
this sport's
then,
hard enough as it is. Like, don't try to change my left handedness. There's absolutely no way I'll be able to do it opposite dominant side, let alone try and do it left handed. Lord.
it's funny that you say that because when I was a kid, I went to this like public camp that was put on by the city for golf, and it was like to get inner city kids involved in golf, and it was cool. It was a free camp put on by the city, and they fed you McDonald's, which is like 95% of the reason why all of us kids went, because we got free
Hell yeah.
cheeseburgers. So we are like, this is great. But they didn't have lefty clubs because this was the early 90s and the internet didn't exist yet, which, for people listening that can't comprehend that, yes, there was a time where the internet literally did not exist.
Or
So,
dial up like you had to fight your parents. It was either like someone's on the internet or someone's taking a phone call.
yeah. And they said, we don't have lefties, you'll just have to learn righty. So there's a lot of
Mm.
sports that I play righty for the sheer fact that lefty equipment did not exist. Or
That's how my
somebody
dad
just
grew up.
couldn't teach. They just couldn't teach it. I was lucky that I got a lefty baseball glove. And
Hmm.
it wasn't because the stores used to get one or two a year. So mine was from a lost and found bin. But you couldn't get those things. So a lot of sports, they just forced you learn.
Even nowadays, like I have a lever action rifle and it's a Remington. And at the time in which I ordered it, I had to call Remington to ask them about production of it. And they said that they do it 1 month a year. They halt factory production to switch the factory over the line of production. And they have maybe 1 week where they'll run left handed bolt action rifles. And I have to pre order or be lucky enough to get one of those. And there's only so many that they make because we're such an oddity.
That Mm, wow, really? So
Now,
wait, they have
with
to switch all of the equipment over just to make lefty?
that's for lever action rifles. With shotguns, you want a left-handed stock. Reason being is the
And that's probably
curvature
wood,
of the
right?
stock. Yes,
Oh, so they can do that
for
whenever.
shotguns.
But
Right.
they don't have to change all the equipment around. So for
Correct.
1 week a year, they make things for lefties.
This was 15 years ago when I ordered it, so things may have changed with Remington since, but that was the time in which I ordered that. And it's no different with pistols. You have so few options for left handed magazine release.
Have you made a holster?
I am capable of making holsters. I choose not to sell them within my business of Hellbound based on liability issues. There are lots of
Interesting.
ignorant people in this world, and I don't want someone to holster incorrectly, shoot themselves, and then try to sue me.
Fair
So,
enough.
unfortunately, that's the world that we live in, and so I choose to be cautious with that. So,
I don't blame you. But I always liked that you did a lot of things, and I could never tell if you wet mold or if you are just very good at getting things to stay in place because a lot of your things they're for items. So do you wet mold or do you kind of just jerry rig everything so that it like stays in place and put a little glue here, a little glue there, and kind of get things around?
no wet molding currently in my patterns. I'm just very particular and specific. My patterning takes quite a while to figure out because it's not just the pattern pieces that I make and the clicker dies, it's also I get templates made out of acrylic.
Yeah,
So I can take a scratch all, and as I'm batch making, I can scratch on this pattern piece. This is where my glue line goes. This is where I have to put my rivet. This is where I line up to my sew line. So this is where I know I'm going to run my stitch line. So there's a lot that goes into pattern making, testing, because for my stuff, it's specific to diameter of 12 gauge shotgun shells. It's specific to diameter of a brass wad knocker. And you want it to be snug in the beginning because leather does stretch. And
yeah,
I don't want
which
those
makes
things to
sense.
be loose. So
Do
things like that.
you typically always use hole exact way the circular hole like the round dent is the word I'm looking for. Do you always use round dent? It looks like a lot of your stuff is that. Now, do you do well actually no, it looks like some of the other ones you have done look like they may be French style, but do you when you're getting your acrylics made, do you do those just in round dent or do you do both ways for the patterns?
My acrylic templates are for marking stitch line and glue line and tape lines. My If I'm going to do stitching, I'll usually use calipers to mark that,
Hmm.
and then I'll hand punch in a stitch line. I use rounds for certain things, or I tend to favor diamonds. French isn't necessarily, I have them, but they're probably my rarest used. I would say rounds or diamonds.
I have wanted to incorporate more stitch lines into my acrylic templates. The issue I've found is that getting the pricking irons through that because I really like how the precision of it. There's something about they're a perfectly straight line, and I can't necessarily get that every time. You can get it close, but I wanted to get it through the acrylic holes, but they never truly fit perfectly through. And I saw your round dent ones, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if she does that and then pricks the holes that way to kind of make it so that you could kind of have the precision of it.
If you wanted to do that, the way to get around that is you would most likely have to punch them individual holes, and you would have to get an acrylic template that was the thinnest acrylic possible. And you would have to get a single punch that has an extended tip. Maker's Leather Supply makes one
Ooh, an
that goes
extended tip.
specifically.
That's interesting. I would have never. I would love to get one that's long with an extended tip because I don't need it to go all the way through, but I feel as though myself and other makers who use acrylic templates that want to incorporate the stitch lines probably find some benefit to that because it's just about marking it. I don't mind going through after the fact and kind of putting them in the place where there's a marking. But I saw that, and that's the one that you use. So for everybody listening, she's showing me a extended punch. That's interesting, and it's the same thickness all the way through.
Yep. This is Maker's Leather Supply made this. It's a 3 millimeter circle punch. They made it specifically to go with their acrylic templates. So
Interesting.
the circle itself, the diameter is too large for a stitching hole, but it is good for your hardware. So like double cap rivets and such.
Yeah,
There are other makers that make them extended tip like this in a single diameter, the full length in smaller diameter. I can't think off the top of my head who it was, but
I've
that's how
never
you can get
seen a
away with it.
company that makes a long enough pricking iron that would incorporate that, but that would be an interesting one for companies to sell that was just slightly longer. Maybe it adds an additional 2 millimeters in length, or something that just add a little extra length where it's not going to go through.
But your accuracy issue is why I tend to favor diamonds over French, because diamonds, they have a point to them. So
Hmm.
once you mark your stitch line with even like a groover, that gives you a notch to rest the diamond irons in. So it helps you
uh,
become more straight because you can lock the groove and you can feel it lock in. Whereas the French, you don't have that luxury because it's like a flat line.
I tend to use the line that's in there, and I try to line it up as perfect as possible on the edge. So, like, if it's the line is there, I put the tip of each iron like right there and then push down so that they're all in unison. But again, that's, you can
Another
always
thing
have.
that you can do to double check yourself is you can hand press your iron into the leather a little bit and then lift up to see where the tips are to make sure that you like it before you put your pricking iron back down into the little indents that you made and before you hammer it in with your awl.
I do that sometimes. I actually have been tinkering around with the idea of taking my old arbor press and put it like tapping a hole or putting a hole in the middle and then putting a pricking iron in there, like one that I maybe don't use, and putting it in there so I could get exactly where I want it every time and just pull it down because it's a 1 ton. It's pretty small. I used to use that originally when I had my clicker dies before I got my 4 ton. And for the price, it would probably be something that a lot of people would find beneficial, especially if you can't make noise, you have young kids, you live in an
Mm-hmm.
apartment. It takes all of the hammering out of it and you still get the same pressure to go all the way through.
I've seen
So,
people do that. I like the feel of the hammering, but I
yeah.
understand that I do that helps with accuracy. If I have a pattern that I print on printer paper, I will take masking tape and actually tape the pattern down to my leather and punch through the stitching holes printed onto the paper.
Okay. Yeah, I do that sometimes too. I think each one is slightly different. I think we're all in that same kind of boat where each time we make something, it's slightly different. I noticed another thing that you had worked on recently, a couple months ago, was the crock that you made.
A lot of makers always, a lot of my friends in the maker community always bring that one up because they know how much that one took out of me. That was a challenge. I'm happy with how it turned out, but that
I
one was
have
rough.
crock that I've had for years. I've mentioned it on God only knows how many episodes, and it's still sitting there terrified to touch it because it's that one little miss. And you're like, whoop, that was $500.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
And like, was that authentic croc? Was that embossed? Was that
Nope, that was legit alligator. And what made that even more stressful is the customer supplied that alligator. So it wasn't even
uh
mine.
so
He
you had
sent
one
it to
you
me.
really had one shot to get it right.
Oh, I was crapping my pants. And he was so nice, this guy. And he had so much faith in me. And I took the job originally because it was supposed to be a black alligator skin. So here I'm thinking, if I mess this up, I can replace it. Well, then we had a couple changes in the creative process and we landed on this mint color. And I was like, oh, God help me because
Yeah. Good luck
mint,
trying to find that exact mint again and have it
oh,
be
I
the
know.
exact same shade too.
Oh, and then like I had to custom mix the edge paint because you can't even find mint edge paint. And the one company that sells mint, it was sold out. So then I had to mix it myself. So thankfully I had the painting background. I mean, I learned so much and it ended up turning out I was thrilled with it. I even because I made my own pattern for that and I had to do a tester for it before I cut into his to make sure that my gussets lined up and my process order because it was also lined and I wanted to hide
Yeah.
as many stitching holes and stitch lines as I could and it was an adventure, but we got there and he loved it and it was a major victory.
No, it came out beautiful. You did an amazing job.
Thank
My
you.
I make sure that my wife doesn't see a lot of the things that I like other makers make. So I'm like, no, it'll be way too expensive. Although she has a crock here, she bought one years ago, and I haven't cut into it because that's another thing. I'm like, I'll screw it up.
And you have to be so careful with it because the grooves in between the tiles, alligator and croc, it's a weak point. So you can't
Yeah,
run a long stitch line through it. So you have to be so careful with fussy cutting your pattern pieces and you have to use stiffeners, otherwise it's too flexible, and you have to take into account the way in which the gator naturally bends and
yeah,
there's a lot
it's
to
a
it.
nightmare. So two things. First, what did you use for a stiffener? Because I'm always intrigued. I'm always asking people on the Discord too. I'm like, what kind of stiffeners are you using? There's so many different things out there, and we only see such a small portion from the few sites that most of us shop from. But there is dozens and dozens of companies that make things. So I always wonder what people use. What did you use? And like the thickness on this one in particular, like what were the layers of croc stiffener, the inside leather? What did you use for that?
For that one, I used Bontex. I can't remember the thickness off the top of my head, but I know it's the thinnest that Bontex offers.
Bontex? I've never even heard of it. Is it Bontex?
I believe so.
I learned something new every day. I didn't even know this
Hey,
was a.
we're always learning, right? We're all in this crapshoot of leather together.
I love it. Is it from Tandy?
I picked mine up from Springfield.
Interesting. I've never heard of it before.
It's great stuff. Okay, let me look it up. I just found my invoice. It's 0.015 inch is the Bontex that I used.
Oh, this is amazing. I love it.
It is great stuff.
For
If
anybody
you look,
wondering, it's like $8 and you get how much is a size? You get a sheet that's 40 inches by 60 inches. So that is what, 12? That's like 5 feet, three and a little under like three and a quarter.
something like that. If you scroll through my page, you'll see a bright pink alligator clutch. That was my pattern tester. And one of my reels or videos or posts that I did, you'll see I showed like how floppy the alligator is before and then after I put the Bontex in it. So you can see the big difference that it makes if you look through. I know I posted it somewhere. But that stuff it's great stuff. And
I've
even the
used multiple
thinnest stuff makes a
kinds.
difference
Yeah,
and it
having it
glues up
thin.
nicely.
Yeah, I have some of the Salpa stuff, and I have some stuff I got years and years ago from another company that I can't even remember.
I just keep accumulating more and more crap, and it's just like some of it works really well, and some of it you feel like you wasted money on, but that's part
That's
of the learning process.
90% of it. Well, it looks like you used another one on is the picture with you gluing on the croc, that little piece. Is that the Bontex stuff?
Which part? Let
It's
me
you were
see.
making bracelets, it looks like.
That's probably the wristlet portion.
Was that with Bontex on the inside?
Had to have been because that's I think all I used on that one. It's been a hot minute though. I don't mean to be telling a lie. If I am, I'd have to
No,
look
no,
at
no.
it.
It's totally fine. It was 27 weeks ago. In case you're wondering,
Ooh, sometimes it feels like yesterday, and I get
I,
nightmares and twitchy.
it is insane. But that is something I'm actually going to buy. It's funny. I always joke with people that I wish I just had unlimited funds that I could use to just buy things and test them out. I really just want to buy different materials, different tools, different things just to try things out just to see what works because I have wasted more money on things that just don't work or work as intended. I think that's the
Yes.
biggest thing. They never work as you picture it for the project that you're picturing it on. And that is the most frustrating.
Or it's just like you never have the right color thread, you never have the right color zipper, you never have the right size hardware. It's just,
It's the worst. And then I did have a second question for the croc. You said the edge paint. What do you use? I always ask because I am intrigued by it all, but I am a Giardini man, and to me, that's the best one that I've tried out over the years.
I'll
And
be
I
the first
always
to admit, I hate edge painting. I loathe edge painting. I avoid edge painting like the plague. I will do almost anything I can to avoid edge paint. If you look at the bottom of the alligator clutch at the base, you'll notice that I did a fold over edge on it, on those bases, just so I wouldn't have to edge paint the sides of the base. I
how did
did
you do the
fold.
fold over on that? Because you can't. Would you just manually hand skive it? Because you can't put that through a skiving machine; it'll get torn to shreds. I'm assuming.
I said a lot of prayers and a lot of swear words after putting it through the skiving machine because I have an NP10, which is the howitzer of bell skivers. It's really meant for saddle work. And so if I were to do it
Yeah, it's a
again, I'd
huge
get the
one.
NP4. But I was so careful with it and I still ripped some of it up. But some of it I did hand skiving, some of it I put through the bell skiver, and then I just manhandled it to fold over the edge. It was a little thick, but it still worked and it was better than ripping it to shreds. But to answer your edge paint question, I've tried Weaver, I've tried Vernice, however you pronounce it. Giardini is my favorite. If I have to go with one, that's my preferred. But again, I
Yeah, and
hate
if, for
edge paint.
anybody who couldn't hear, she said she's tried Vernice and what was the other one you said you tried?
The Weaver brand when I first started because it was the most inexpensive, and then I
Yeah.
realized how much I hated it, and then thought that maybe it was because it was a lesser brand. Then I went a little bit more expensive, and then I went a little bit more expensive, and found out I still hate it. So that's another reason I'm not a big fan of chrome tan leathers, among other things. But yeah, to
I've
people who
never
are
had a
talented with
complaint
edge
with
paint, good for them.
Giardini, and they're like so lovely. Every time I mean, I haven't talked to them in 6 months or a year, but
But they're so nice.
they're so lovely. Every time I reach out to them, if I ever have a question or anything, and they're always so supportive of the podcast too. They're so like lovely out there. I think it's a family run business.
It seems that way. I don't know for sure, but they act like they are.
Yeah, but they're always so lovely when I reach out, and it works good because I actually think that they have the best product. Uh, but yeah, I have not had great. I know a lot of people love Vernice, and I just couldn't get it to the way I wanted. And I know a lot. I'm probably more in the minority, but coming from the sneaker side and working a lot with painting, it just that was the only one. Isn't it funny how people who came from things that involved painting in other facets tend to go towards Giardini. Like,
That is funny.
because, like, I still love Angelus for regular, like, painting, but not edges. I wouldn't use it on edges. But it's funny how we both worked in other mediums and we gravitated towards this because it got us the results that we felt were close enough to what we were used to with other professions or different sides of it.
Oh, I
And I
didn't think
always
of it
found
that way,
that
but yeah, yeah, that does make sense.
because it seems like it's a
It's just
higher
quality, and I felt like I could
yeah.
get it to do what I wanted it to do better than the others. And me and edge paint, we don't get along in general. So
But Angelus in terms of regular edge paint is I mean regular paint is fantastic and I have them in so many colors and I've used them throughout the years and I don't
I
think I would
haven't tried
leave.
those because, funny enough, with me being a medical background and medical professional, I haven't done any of the firefighters or any of that, which requires a lot of flood painting. I haven't gone into that. I'll leave that for the professionals. So, but I
I
haven't
have an
done
air
that.
sprayer that I use, and I mean, a lot of times I'll hand paint it, just take a brush and just do it. Uh, but I do enjoy doing. I also think an air sprayer gives you very clean, light coats because it doesn't put out a lot of paint. It's very very light coats. Uh, but if you're doing a whole panel or something, it's nice. It paints it very uniform and things like that. But a lot of times, if I'm just doing little things, I would always just open up a thing of paint and just paint. And it never had any issues. Um, but yeah, I'm really glad that I asked. And what'd you use on the inside of that for the lining on the other side of the Bontex?
The customer provided, I believe it was lambskin. So it was like a nice, rich eggplant color lambskin.
Very thin too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It came out beautiful, and I always ask questions because I like to know how people approach projects like that because I think those are telling you find out the most from people on the projects that are unique, not the everyday card holder, but the things that somebody had to really sit down and think about. I'm always fascinated to see how they approached it and what they did. Now, in terms of the things that you use most, what was the one upgrade that you think kind of changed the game for you? What was the one, you had these hand tools and you're like, oh man, when I upgraded to this, it changed the game for me? Or something like, what was something that really moved the needle for you?
Just a tool in general or a hand
Yeah,
tool
or you
specifically?
maybe had really a cheap stitching pony or a cheap pricking irons or a cheap hammer or it could be a small and a large one. You could say, I got a clicker press or I got a
All right.
skiver, and that completely changed things for me.
I'll say, like, hand tool wise, the thing that really changed the game for me is going to be I have it's sort of a half head knife from Rocky Mountain. So it's not a full round
Oh
head
yeah, I
knife.
know what those are. Yeah, they're unique.
Yeah, and it what's great about it is being left-handed. A lot of people who are right-handed couldn't just walk into my shop and use my tools because a lot of them are beveled for left-handed people or they're left-handed specific because I use them. They're mine. But this specific
So I could just
half,
rob you, silly. Like I could walk,
you could come
take
on over, hang
everything.
out.
Yeah, I'd be one of like three. It would be me because there's only like three of us probably in the world that would need lefty
Right?
leather tools. So,
All
it wouldn't
right.
be
Okay.
exactly hard to find me. You'd be like, oh, well, it
You're
was
like, I know who
definitely
took
Matt
this.
because the other person was in, Asia or Europe at the time.
So I would say that this, I think they call it a half head knife on Rocky Mountain, and it's double beveled, so I can use it as a lefty. But it helped me with my rounded corner cutting like a dream because I could never get it right with an X-Acto or trying to cut it with a rotary blade or anything like that. Being able to hold this comfortably and rock the blade, and that really changed the game for me as far as rounded corners and edges because you come across those a lot, and I was never happy with how they were turning out until I got that. That was major for me.
I
And
loved the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I loved the Charter Made blade, but the problem with that was it's the best quality blade because of the thickness. But the problem is X-Actos you can just throw away and start a new really fresh knife, but that one has to be legitimately sharpened. And if I was like a professional full-time craftsman, I would probably use that every day because I think it's a much better knife. The X-Actos they work great, but it's like you said, the corners they bend. And if you put too much pressure, you can slip a little bit or you don't get it just right. And I find that incredibly frustrating.
And it's difficult to keep your blade at a 90-degree
Yep.
because if you're cutting at an angle, you have ruined your edge. When you're
Yep.
rocking a head knife, you can keep it perpendicular to your cutting mat, and then you have a nice edge to bevel later.
And it's
That's a
still
common mistake people make. Yeah.
it's a thick blade that allows you that kind of grace as you're going down because it's thin at the bottom, but it gets wider that adds the heft to it. So you can kind of do that, which is nice. Have their Rocky Mountain skiving knife, and it was amazing for a long time. But after it got sharp, I've had it sharpened twice, and it's never come back to the way I got it the first time. So it's either not being sharpened appropriately, or it was a one trick pony where it came absurdly sharp, and then once it lost that first edge, there was no going back. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. But that is a knife I'll have to look into. That's a nice. Is it hard to keep sharp, or is
No,
it?
I was sharpening challenged until I spoke with a couple of other makers, and they taught me how to sharpen my knives, because that's such an important part of this artistry, is keeping your tool sharp, because if you don't, it ruins your work, but even more so, it makes it dangerous, because what we do is dangerous. A lot of the sharp blades that we use and the knives and the way that we cut and what we have to do, it's dangerous. And if your blades are not sharp, they will jump, they will snag, and so you have to be proficient in sharpening. And I was lucky to meet some makers who took the time and showed me how to sharpen and answered my ignorant questions. And so it sharpens up nice, even for someone who's not the best at sharpening and is still learning how to do it. It sharpens up nice for me.
I love the kindness in this community. It always surprises me. I guess as a society, we almost expect people to be rude and just kind of blow you off. But I really do love the kindness that people show a lot of times to like teach things that are time consuming. It's not
Yeah.
always easy, and they could easily just record a video and try to sell it to you. And a lot of people don't. They just actually help. And I,
Shout out to Mitch at Wolf Spirit Crafts for that one, because he was standing in his garage, because he's a leather worker, but he's also a knife sharpener by trade and a chef, and he took video of himself sharpening a skiving knife and sent the videos to me so I could refer back to them, and answered all my questions, and he game changer for me. So
well, Mitch, if you're listening, reach out. Maybe next month we'll have you on if you're interested, if you happen to be listening. Uh, I'm sure
and then
a lot of people would be interested. How do you sharpen it? What do you use?
so I use just like your typical sharpening, you know, block with the
The
green,
strop.
the strop. Yep.
What do you use if you need a full sharpen? Do you use just the strop, or do you have a?
I have a sharpening stone set, like a wet sharpening, which Mitch recommended what to get, and he
Oh,
he has a
if he's a chef, I'm assuming he sharpens his knives like once a week because
well, he was a
chefs.
chef. Now he
Oh,
works at a butcher shop, and he does knife sharpening for clients and customers. So he's got like professional sharpening stones. But he
yeah.
directed me to something affordable that I could easily get off of Amazon and use like for wet sharpening stones on my own. So for the most part, stropping. But once that doesn't work as well, then I go to the wet sharpening stones. And he showed me how to use those as well.
For people listening, what grits did you use?
It has been so long since I've had to do that, I would have to look it up, because I have them set in a box. So I know which ones to use, but what grits they are, couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I know a lot of people tend to use, I think it's either 800 or 1200 on one side, and usually, I think there's various types of ones. I had a stone once, and I was not very good at it. It was,
It's an art
I
form in
strop a
itself.
lot, but yeah, that is a skill set that is very, very tiresome and difficult. And I'm going to pivot a little bit to see, because you seems like you do a lot of one-off projects, things like that, and you also have your own line of products that you make too. What has been the best part and the biggest challenge of being your own boss and being your own business owner and finding that balance? Because I think a lot of people always ask, they say, "Oh, how do you price? How do you do this? How do you do that?" And it's never the same for everybody, but I think it's also very difficult to navigate that landscape for new makers who don't own a business already. And they say, hey, like, how much should I take in custom orders, or should I take custom orders, or should I just make a lineup? Like, what were the things that you kind of learned from that?
I would say my Instagram is a little bit, I don't want to say that it's not accurate, but it's a little bit skewed of a representation of what I do because my meat and potatoes is the shotgun items. That's what I sell most. The issue is the shotgun industry is so heavily older population that most of my followers are younger. And so, how many times can I post a majority of what I sell of shotgun items when I know the occasional one off that I do gets more attention? And the goal of my Instagram is to bring in hopefully the younger generation and younger eyes on my stuff.
Yeah.
So, the one offs I do, and I do enjoy them. And so, I figure if I work that hard on them, why not post them? So, I do. But customs, I rarely do. Currently, my customs are closed, which brings me to answer your question on what's the most difficult for me. It would be time because I'm a mom to two young boys. I have one who just turned 6 and one who's about to turn 3. My 3-year old has some delays. He takes speech therapy and physical therapy, and so that takes up a lot of my days of the week. I also often babysit my niece and my nephew, also age 6 and age 3. So sometimes I've got 4 kids by myself and I'm in my shop trying to fill orders and they're playing behind me. I got a little play area down here in my basement shop. And so the most difficult thing for me is time and mom guilt because it's like I do this for me because it's the one thing in this life that is just for me and my creative outlet. And the money that Hellbound makes, it's the fun money for the family. It's putting away money for my boys for college or trade school, whatever they choose to do. It's vacation money for the family. It's the fun stuff, but it also takes time away from them. And I'm aware of that. And it makes me feel like, well, instead of doing this, should I just be playing with them? Because they're only little for so long. Pricing strategy, there's a million out there, and it's just, I take the cost of what my materials cost, which aren't inexpensive because this is a fun fact that a lot of people don't realize if you're not around firearms and leather. You can only use or should only use vegetable tan leathers when it comes to firearms. Reason being is the chemicals in the chrome tan process can cause pitting of barrels. You can ruin firearms if you rest them on chrome tans. So in this shop, I use vegetable tan only when it comes to the firearm goods, and I tend to favor it in my work anyway. But when it comes to pricing, I take cost of materials, I take the amount of time it takes me to make it, how much I pay myself, and I calculate a little bit of a formula and I put my price on it. And I know I'm not the least expensive. I know I'm not the Maserati of pricing, but I price it at a price that I'm comfortable. And if somebody feels that I am overpriced, then they aren't my customer. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. It's
Yeah.
just, it is what it is because I very much enjoy it, but it takes time away from my family. And if you want to buy it somewhere cheaper, everyone has a budget and everyone has their own fun money. And if you want to spend it somewhere else, then that's great. I don't take offense to it. So I feel like a lot of people in leatherwork have a tendency to underprice your time and underprice your work, and we need to be better about that as makers.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And it's funny, this conversation came up recently with somebody on Discord, and you always want to provide some type of helpful is that, at least my feeling is that makers often feel as though they shouldn't be able to charge a certain price because somebody could buy a name brand thing for that same price. But the difference that you're not always getting something handmade, you're getting something mass produced for that price and you're paying for the name. And they tend to think, oh, well, my experience isn't worth that, or they can get it cheaper. Just because somebody can get it cheaper doesn't mean you shouldn't value your time and the experience. I always kind of go back to the trades where you could pay somebody to come in, an electrician, and they could spend 8 hours doing something, or you could have another electrician come in. It could be 15 minutes, and he could do it right. A lot of times, you're paying not for how long it takes, but you're paying for the skill that they bring to it. And just because it's quick and easy to do, or something like that, you have to think of all the times you've messed up. You have to, like, all the things that go into it, and you can't be, like you said, afraid to charge more, because I think there's this fear about paying yourself. Like, if I charge too much, it's like, no, your time is worth something. You wouldn't go and work at your day job for free.
Mm-mm.
You would want to be paid for the time you're putting into it. And I try to tell people, for the most part, is pay yourself an hourly wage that you're comfortable with, or do a static price that you think is fair per item if it's something that you mass produce. But if you're just making one offs and saying, hey, I want to make X per hour, just say that that's your rate. And however
Those
long it
are the
takes,
hardest to price, the one offs, because had I priced that alligator clutch
it would have
at
been
the
thousands
true,
and thousands and thousands of
oh,
dollars.
oh, for real, the true amount of time that it took me. And quite honestly, that wouldn't have been fair to the customer either, because they shouldn't necessarily have to pay for my learning curve on a brand new project and everything that I went through. I feel like I'm not ready to truly price something out at a fair rate until I've made it several times and determined my process at my max efficiency.
It's funny that you say that, and it makes me think, if the outcome of that product was as good as if they went to somebody, so taking the time out of it, and say they went to someone else and they charged, say, $2,000 for that, and they did it in half the amount of time. If the outcome is the same and the quality is the same, I feel like you should be able to charge the same as somebody else, because as long as the end product is a high quality, which it clearly was, you should be able to charge that regardless, because the end product is what they're getting, and they're getting, even, excuse me, you're learning as you go. As long as the end product is of extremely high quality, you should be compensated for what they get and not all of the other things that go into it.
No, but what I'm saying is, had I charged my hourly rate and how many hours
Oh,
I put into it, it wouldn't have been fair because,
yeah, you have to
you
do
know,
like a flat rate type thing.
yeah, because I mean, I had to create a pattern, edit a pattern, because that's another thing about alligator skins and crocodile skins. They're all different. Even if one is 48 centimeters and another one is 48 centimeters, they're different because the roundness of the belly, there's difference there. I had to do the pink pattern tester, so that wouldn't have been fair to charge him for me, testing it on a pink one to make sure my pattern was correct. It wouldn't have been fair, for all the pattern edits and all that's another reason I shy away from customs and their clothes, because I am so busy as of right now with being in shooting sports. Spring, summer, and right before Christmas are my busiest times. Uh, some people shoot throughout the year, but you have much less fall winter shooters than you do in spring, summer. But it just that one, I just, customs, because I am a perfectionist, because I put so much into my work, because I care, just, customs take a lot of time, and so I tend to shy away from them, especially during the busy times.
Yeah, customs are the one thing I've always struggled with. And I think customers sometimes have this irrational thing where they feel as though they shouldn't have to pay for the pattern design thing. If it doesn't already exist and you have to make it, I struggle with that, because they should be paying for that pattern because it does not
Absolutely.
exist. So what they're asking for, and your time to make prototypes and things like that, you should probably have to be paid for all that, because even if they went to somebody else wouldn't have that pattern either, because it doesn't exist, because they're asking for something very specific, and it's another design that a company has and you can buy from them, but they're purposely going to somebody who doesn't have what they're asking to be made. So
And
it's
I
not
mean,
like they're asking for a color combination of something you already make.
that was another part of the learning process. I mean, as makers, we're always learning. I
Yeah.
quoted that job way incorrectly. I underpriced it. but I'm honorable. I honored it. This is what I quoted him, so that's what
Yeah.
he's going to pay. And I'm not the type to go back and be like, you know, it's taken me longer than I thought, so I'm actually
Yeah.
going to charge you. No, that's not right. It's not.
No, that's the
You
honorable way to
can't do
go
that.
about it. But I think this is one of the biggest struggles in our craft is that custom one offs is probably the most consistent question I've seen over the years of people who struggle of what to charge. And when you start out, you tend to take custom jobs because you don't have a customer base. So most crafters, when they start out, that's how they start out. They start out with custom orders and they undervalue all the work that goes into it. Those jobs really should be. I get there's a difference between a custom belt and a custom bag. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
But sometimes people, I've seen stories like, yeah, I only charged this person $200, and I was like, well, that is like insane. It's like, no, like you should never get something that if you can't, if that's close to the price of what you would get at Macy's, then that's not a close comparison because you didn't go into Macy's and have them like design it right for you and pick out your colors and all these things. They even upcharge you at places that make it off of patterns and mass produce it if you change the colors.
I
You
mean,
know,
like, you want a custom color? That's easy. I already have the pattern. You want to throw your initials on it? Great. Love that. But you want something custom from the ground up? I don't have the time for it now, which is unfortunate, but I don't want to delay you. I don't want to have the stress of that. I have to be there for my kids, and I just not for right now. Maybe I'll swing back around to it because I enjoy custom work to a certain extent. I love the creativity of it. I like that it's something different for my brain to work on, which is why I love doing trades with other makers. I really like to dive into that. I'm working on one right now, which is way overdue, and thankfully he's been super sweet about it. But that's why I love doing trades, just the creativity
yeah.
aspect of it and something different and fun. I get to use materials that I don't often get to, but like I said, my biggest struggle is time.
And I think that's a lot of thing for anybody who's not just a parent. If you have other commitments, it is hard to find the time and sit down and just do that. And I notice that I tend to have 30 minutes here, 40 minutes here. It's not often that I get to just sit down there for hours and hours. And the worst part is too is you're in the middle of a project and you finish that step and then you realize, oh, I need to wait until it dries or I need to wait for this. And it's the startup and go is sometimes hard when you have so many other commitments because it might be a week before you get back to it.
That's why what you just mentioned there is why I typically have anywhere from 3 to 5 different projects running at any given point, just so I can be at my max efficiency. If this is waiting for glue up, I'm sewing that. If this needs to be dyed, I'm, tying off stitch threads over here. So I'm constantly rotating stations so I have something that can be worked on. I'm packaging this. I'm trying to do my admin work after my shower, in bed typing this up. It's just because while Hellbound is very much a family adventure because I need help with certain things, like, my mom will watch my younger son, or my dad will pick up my older son from school, or, my husband's great on the weekends with allowing me to have my time in my dungeon, working. If you email me, I'm the one who responds. If you order something, you're talking to me. If you place an order, I'm the one who does the happy dance. I'm the one who packages your order, mails it out, prints the label, does all the things. That's me. I'm a one
Yeah.
woman show. So I appreciate everyone's patience, and I always try to honor the turnaround times, and I will kill myself to meet a deadline because all I have is my word in this industry, and word of mouth is how I get sales. But I'm a one woman show. And if we take a family vacation and I can't get to my bench for a week, I feel the stress of, oh, I'm falling behind. So it is what it is.
And I think we've all been there, it's
Yeah.
kind of like everybody, you do what you can. And, you know, speaking of just taking travels and stuff, I saw the duffel you made. And I'm fascinated with duffels. I don't know why I have this fascination with them, but I love that one. Maybe because I'm a sucker for sports too.
Thank
There was
you. We're
something about
big
it.
baseball family.
Yeah, I thought that was really so. You said at the beginning of the episode that I found interesting, and I need to know the answer is growing up, were you a Cubs fan? I know you're a Cubs fan now, but you are from Florida, and I can't imagine there's a lot of Floridians who are big Cubs fans.
So,
So, where's your allegiances?
growing up, we were sort of Marlins fans, sort of Detroit Tiger fans, because my parents are from Michigan originally. The
Makes
reason I
sense.
ended up here is because my sister met her now husband in college, and he's from this area. So he married her, stole her. My sister lived here, and we decided to move up here. So now I live in the same neighborhood as my sister, and it's easier to juggle the kids that way. So we are now Cubby fans and have been since my sister has lived in this area. But I mean, growing up in South Florida, you don't really have Florida sports fans necessarily because so many
So many
people in South.
transplants.
Yes, everyone is rooting for where they came from, so it's
Yeah.
kind of a strange dynamic there. But yeah, the duffel bag was my 6-year-old son's idea. He had been on me about wanting that duffel for a long time. He wanted a red duffel because red is his favorite color. He wanted to have patches on it that he could add patches to every baseball stadium he's visited. I
Oh,
thought
that's
he was
cute.
going to forget about it, but he didn't. Then my parents were like, hey, the Cubs are playing in St. Louis. Can we take him, just us, for a couple nights? I was like, sure. And that's when my son reminded me again about this duffel. So I was like, oh my God. I was so stressed about getting this thing done. I was so worried I was going to let him down because I was using a pattern that I purchased that didn't come with instructions. So I was cross referencing some YouTube videos that I found. I needed it to be lined, so I drafted my own lining pattern that I also had to put a zipper in a bottom seam because I had to be able to access the inside later to add more patches. I knew I had to do that. I had a
Patterns
couple
are
of,
always suggestions, I feel like. I don't ever
yeah,
see them as a finished thing. I just see it as a TBD. You know you're going to have to add and do all the. And that's the thing that stops me from doing other projects is the time commitment to make it a good pattern.
exactly.
It is
Make it your own,
exhausting.
make it work. Yep. People don't realize how much goes into it unless you've done it, unless you've been there in the trenches. But there were a couple of moments in the duffel making where because you run through it, the process in your head over and over, trying to avoid the big catastrophic mistake that will ruin it and be the end of the project. And I thought I had it. Then I'm in the process of building it, and I had a couple of those moments where I'm like, oh God, now what? One I couldn't figure out. I had to FaceTime call Shane, Bo the Maker, and be like, "Here's where I'm at. How do I get past this? Otherwise, I'm dead in the water, dude. Because I got to get this finished. The kid's leaving soon, and it needs to be done." So Shane helped me think outside the box because I was just at that point exhausted and too close to it, and we got it done. And it's far from perfect, but my son saw no mistake in it, and he loves it, and that's all that matters. But I'm just like, ooh. Ooh.
Kids don't care. They're flaws. Now, how big is it? Is it like how wide? Because it's hard to tell when it's next to a kid. You're like, oh well, looks massive, but then is it the size of an adult duffel
Oh
or
yeah, it's an adult duffel size. I wanted
like
him to be able to
could you
use it,
pack all
grow
your
into
clothes in
it.
it for a weekend?
I could, yeah.
All right.
It's a good size.
The reason why I say that is when you said that for all the ones that you've been to, I'd be lying if I said didn't say that I want to rip this off and do it for the NBA stadiums every year. Me and my best friend go to a different NBA stadium.
Oh, freaking do it. I think it'd be awesome.
And
Do
how
it.
cool would that be if I got a patch from every NBA arena and I took the bag every year?
Do it. That's what it's all about, man.
And
Do
then
it.
it
I
could
think
be
it's
like I
great.
used it for 30 years and every
Yes.
year I added a thing to it, which I think would be the
Here
hardest
we
thing
go.
would probably be flipping it inside out every year. Or no, I
No,
could.
that's why I put a zipper in the lining so I could pull the lining out, unzip it, and then reach my hand in there to saddle stitch a patch on.
Oh, so the
Oh, that just clicked.
Yeah,
Light
dude.
bulb. I saw the
Yeah,
light bulb.
yeah. Well, yeah, that 100%. I just was like, oh, that's brilliant. And then what did you do to connect the lining to the leather? Did you just snap or?
I put an interfacing around where I knew I was going to sew it up by the zipper, and then I sewed the zipper to the bag and the lining to the zipper tape all in one stitch line at the top.
So you can disconnect it and take it out.
Technically, yes, but I did it by machine. I'm hoping I don't have to. That was one of the things that if I were to do this again, I would not do it that way. And I have a couple different ideas because I really struggled with the zipper area. But to answer your question, the dimensions are 19.7 by 9.5 by 10.5 inches.
Oh, so it's 19 inches wide, like a crossbody.
It says
Yeah,
19 because it's converting from centimeters to inches. In
yeah,
centimeters, it's 50 by 24 by 26, but I figured in your head you could picture inches better.
yeah. Those stupid Americans.
But
The
I mean, you
metric
could do it
system
with
is so
any
much
duffel
better.
bag pattern. You don't have to use that one. Any duffel bag pattern that you find. And you technically don't have to line it if you don't want to. I just wanted the lining with some interior pockets and it would look nicer.
I wonder if a snap would work well. Where if you put snaps like across, like inside, and no, I'm
But
trying
then
to
you
think
would
of.
see them on top of the bag,
Yeah, you'd
unless
see them
you,
on the outside.
which if you made that look like a feature.
What if there was a pocket and it was in the pocket that was stitched on? And no, that still wouldn't work either.
So I've got other ideas. The zipper section and how I would attach the lining, like in what order. I have to change my process order. It's just one of those things, trial by fire. You know, you think of it differently your second, third time around.
Is this going to be something? Can we like just strategize together? Because I love this and I have till November to have it done. And I love this. I'm like giddy thinking about adding a stitch from every place we visit every year for 30 years. That's just the coolest. I don't
Okay,
know. That just seems so
so
fun. I don't know. There's something about it. Like it's just, that's
because it's
really
just
clever.
it's sports and it's happy and it's cool and it's like you get to collect something, but it's not a bunch of crap in a drawer. It's something that makes you happy and you get to use it and you travel.
It's
It's
memories.
function. Yes.
Like every time I look at that bag, I can see, oh, I remember when we went to, New Orleans or Orlando or Detroit or Chicago, like that. That's cool. I love it.
Yes,
That,
and you get to have from every arena or stadium. And I think like my
oh,
son
that's
really
so
freaking
cool.
nailed the idea there. I was like, dude,
Was that his idea?
it was his idea.
Don't you love how somebody 6 years old just blew both of our minds?
Yes. And he's a little
Brilliant.
leather crafter himself. He has his own logo and he does projects and he does quite well for his age. And he
Love
Shane
it.
made him some snaps and he's Sea Monster Leather. If you look at Shane's page and you see the little snaps, that's him. That's my Carson. We call him Sea Monster, so that's why he wanted to be Sea Monster Leather.
Well, I feel like kids like Shane more than adults do because he sends stuff to my son and it's like his favorite stuff. It's like on his nightstand. I'm like, I don't know why you keep a ruler on your nightstand, but yet you do, and
Well,
it's
Shane's, Santa of Canada. That's just what it is.
he's a giant child. I told him yesterday we fight like we're siblings. Like I get irrationally upset at things, but yeah, I can't. I like lost my focus because I'm just so excited about this. I think that is such a fun. I guess the wonder is it big enough to hold 30 patches?
It depends on how close you put the patches and the size of the patches. I mean, it's a sizable duffel. It really is. It
I
was,
wonder if it's scalable. I wonder if it's something where like I could make it bigger.
okay, oh yeah, you can scale anything. Do you have a sewing machine or are you all hand stitched though?
I
That's
have
the
a
kicker.
I have a sewing machine, and I guess you can probably hear I'm getting a Teams call in the background, which I wish I could silence, but unfortunately I can't. It's just ringing. So people listening, they get to hear my
Oh,
Teams
you're
thing
so
going
popular.
off.
So,
I wish I
my
was not
idea
popular.
for the future, which Shane kind of like brought me to this idea. The way the original pattern is is the main body has three pieces. It was the two body panels that was
Mm-hmm.
then connected by a zipper at the top, and
Yeah.
then the base panel.
Yeah.
What I think I would do for the next one is leave the base panel as its
Yep.
own separate piece, but then I think I would take the side body panels,
Yep.
make them as one large panel, and then cut out an oblong hole for the zipper to rest in. So
Oh.
then I would take the lining fabric and do it the same way. So a base piece where I could still install the zipper and the base piece seam, make one large piece with an oblong hole for the zipper. I would cut out a piece of leather for the lining that would surround the oblong of the zipper, and I would attach the zipper to the lining. I would pre-punch the holes around the oblong of that leather surround on the lining, and I would pre-punch the holes of the leather oblong of the actual main body piece of the leather exterior of the bag, and then I would hand stitch that on. And then I could be more accurate. It would look better. I wouldn't have to worry about fighting it with the sewing machine and not getting to the ends.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Okay.
think that's how I would attach the lining to the bag and the zipper.
And then I guess it would get tricky if you're gonna take it out. So you just have to take out the hand stitching.
You don't have to take it out because you just have to reach in, pull your lining out,
Oh, because it
unzip.
wouldn't be connected at the bottom.
Exactly. It's
Oh.
a floating drop in lining.
Oh,
So then,
that's
and the
smart.
zipper is long enough and the bag is long enough, you can throw in your punch board inside the bag to wherever you want to put the patch. You can hand punch around the perimeter of your patch and then reach in there and hand sew your patch on.
Clever. All right, I love it. We've lost 90% of the listeners at this point. They
That's okay. They don't understand our dreams, Matt. It's okay.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, it's yeah, they've completely signed off. I'm sure there's somebody in their car right now going, "I've been listening to this for the last 15 minutes. What is this nonsense? They've been talking about a duffel." But yeah, so clearly we have dreams and aspirations, and I'm
But
gonna
this proves my point. This proves my point exactly. Most of my sales are the shotgun stuff, but most of the listeners want to see the one offs.
yeah,
What
100%.
are the questions about? The
Yeah.
alligator clutch and the duffel. Like, hilarious.
Yeah, so nobody cares about that. And they just want to like listen to people banter about nonsense. So we talked about the important things. So I always end with, where are you going? Where are you in 5 years? Where is Stevie? Are you owning the Cubs? Are you selling these beautiful duffels and making millions? Are you on the Today Show? Where are we in 5 years?
Well, I'm happy with the Ricketts. I love them. They've done great things for the Cubs, so they can stay. I don't want to take over for them.
Okay, fair enough. We'll let them stay.
The goal is to finalize my pattern lineup for Hellbound and get a website going. I have Shane helping me with some patterns because I have reached a point of busyness with life and with orders that I came to realize I need some help if I want to get my goals achieved by the time in which I want to get them achieved. So I've hired on Shane as my pattern maker, and we're working on some things right now and some ideas, and hoping to get my website going. Because as of right now, it's word of mouth sales, which is great, and it's been keeping me going. But it would be nice to have a website to refer to the old timers who don't have Instagram and don't understand what that's about. It would just streamline things because they're comfortable with the
Yeah,
website. They're comfortable emailing me, calling me, placing an order in person, but I'm not always everywhere. So
that is
that's
true.
the goal. Pattern finalization, finishing up my lineup, getting photos taken, website up, and that's where I'm at. And my youngest is going to start preschool 2 days a week come the fall. So that'll be helpful with me time wise. I won't know what to do with myself with a few extra hours every day. I might actually be able to be more efficient.
That's
So
wild. Free
that's the
time,
hope.
that's too crazy. Something will, yeah, you're gonna have something else. That'll never happen. But this has been awesome. I like truly appreciate you coming on, and this was fun. I learned a lot of things today and clearly found myself my next project. But I want everybody to be able to find you and place all of their orders and all of their trap shooting orders, for the sport I just found out about today, which I'm excited
Yeah,
about.
give me a follow, reach out. I'm here for any questions,
Are you going to be in the
whatever.
Olympics? That was the one question I wanted to ask. I forgot all about it. Don't answer the question about where they can find you. Tell me, are you ever going to qualify for the Olympics?
Oh, I mean, I did all right when I competed. I did fine. I held my own, but Olympics, I don't know. If I wasn't a mom and I could put in more practice time, maybe, but I don't see that happening in the next 5 years. So, but
How
there's no
far is
age
it
limit.
away? Like, is it a feasible one that we could bully you into trying for? I'd like to know an Olympian. So, is it feasible
I mean,
that we
I
could
have
bully you
shot
into?
100 straight before, but I don't think I could be an Olympian. No.
How many do Olympians shoot in a row?
Well, they also shoot something different. It's called Olympic trap. So it's a slightly different version, and I haven't tried that yet. So that separates the men from the boys for sure.
Well, are you going to try it? I need to know if I can know an Olympian, and you're the closest chance I got.
Oh, I'm definitely going to try it. They have a field up here that shoots Olympic trap, and the clays come out, I think, 60 something miles an hour. I'm trying it. I'm
All
doing it.
right,
I'll
good.
let you know
So,
how bad I suck. I'll report back.
I anticipate I will be waiting because I really want to be like, yeah, my friend who's an Olympian, and we can bring our duffels to the Olympics.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
We'll have to have the Olympic duffel.
I can. Yeah, for all the Yeah, there could be they could be bigger patches because I don't think you can do too many
If you do the
Olympics.
duffel, though, definitely reach out.
Hundred,
I'm super
hundred
excited.
percent.
I
It's
want
gonna
to see
be.
you do the duffel. Now I'm going to shame you into doing it. You better do it. I have to see it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've been talking about it forever, but I have finally conquered my fears of doing zippers. So that's not as bad. I just get ADD and I go on to the next thing because it's big and shiny and I'm like, "Ooh, I'll go try this." All right,
It's
but
the
now,
artist brain. We all do that.
yeah. So now that we've talked about that, now you can tell everybody where they can find you now that I know your Olympics.
Well, you can find me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to find me. Hellbound and back. That's me.
All right. So Hellbound and Back leather for anybody wondering. I don't want somebody to go to Hellbound and Back and not find you because then they'd be like, "Wait,
Oh, there
where is
might be
she?"
some real interesting stuff there. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows where the Hellbound and Back is. So Hellbound and Back leather. Also, it's in the show notes, so you can click on it from there. Thanks everybody as always for listening. You can find us at Leathershop Pod on socials and leathershoppod.com and reach out to Stevie and get all your trap shooting needs and tell your trap shooting friends. Tell everybody. Find the trap shooting friends you didn't know you had and send them to Stevie so she can make more sales. Catch everybody next month and thanks again, Stevie.
Thank you.